Genesis 31. Now Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken away all that belonged to our father, and built all this wealth at our father's expense. And Jacob saw from the countenance of Laban that his attitude toward him had changed. Then the Lord said to Jacob, Go back to the land of your fathers, and to your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent word and called Rachel and Leah to the field where his flocks were. And he told them, I can see from your father's countenance that his attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength, and although he has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said, The speckled will be your wages, then the whole flock bore speckled offspring. If he said, The streaked will be your wages, then the whole flock bore streaked offspring. Thus God has taken away your father's livestock and given them to me. When the flocks were breeding, I saw in a dream that the streaked, spotted, and speckled males were mating with the females. In that dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob. And I replied, Here I am. Look up, he said, and see that all the males that are mating with the flock are streaked, spotted, or speckled. For I have seen all that Laban has done to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed the pillar and made a solemn vow to me. Now get up and leave this land at once, and return to your native land. And Rachel and Leah replied, Do we have any portion or inheritance left in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as outsiders? Not only has he sold us, but he has certainly squandered what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. So do whatever God has told you. Then Jacob got up and put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock before him, along with all the possessions he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now while Laban was out shearing his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household idols. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he was running away. So he fled with all his possessions, crossed the Euphrates, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. On the third day, Laban was informed that Jacob had fled. So he took his relatives with him, pursued Jacob for 7 days, and overtook him in the hill country of Gilead. But that night God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream and warned him, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there as well. Then Laban said to Jacob, What have you done? You have deceived me and carried off my daughters like captives of war. Why did you run away secretly and deceive me without even telling me? I would have sent you away with joy and singing, with tambourines and harps. But you did not even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. Now you have done a foolish thing. I have power to do you great harm. But last night the God of your father said to me, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. Now you have gone off because you long for your father's house. But why have you stolen my gods? I was afraid, Jacob answered, for I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. If you find your gods with anyone here, he shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself if anything is yours, and take it back. For Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the idols. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, then Leah's tent, and then the tents of the 2 maidservants, but he found nothing. Then he left Leah's tent and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel had taken Laban's household idols, put them in the saddlebag of her camel, and was sitting on them. And Laban searched everything in the tent, but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, Sir, do not be angry that I cannot stand up before you, for I am having my period. So Laban searched, but could not find the household idols. Then Jacob became incensed and challenged Laban. "What is my crime?" he said. "For what sin of mine have you so hotly pursued me? You have searched all my goods. Have you found anything that belongs to you? Put it here before my brothers and yours, that they may judge between the two of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten the rams of your flock. I did not bring you anything torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself, and you demanded payment from me for what was stolen by day or night. As it was, the heat consumed me by day and the frost by night, and sleep fled from my eyes. Thus for 20 years I have served in your household, 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flocks, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, surely by now you would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my affliction and the toil of my hands, and last night he rendered judgment." But Laban answered Jacob, "These daughters are my daughters, these sons are my sons, and these flocks are my flocks. Everything you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine, or the children they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between you and me." So Jacob picked out a stone and set it up as a pillar, and he said to his relatives, "Gather some stones." So they took stones and made a mound, and there by the mound they ate. Laban called it Jagar-Saadutha, and Jacob called it Galeed. Then Laban declared, "This mound is a witness between you and me this day." Therefore the place was called Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because Laban said, "May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are absent from each other. If you mistreat my daughters or take other wives, although no one is with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me." Laban also said to Jacob, "Here is the mound, and here is the pillar I have set up between you and me. This mound is a witness, and this pillar is a witness, that I will not go past this mound to harm you, and you will not go past this mound and pillar to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice on the mountain, and invited his relatives to eat a meal. And after they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. Early the next morning, Laban got up and kissed his grandchildren and daughters and blessed them. Then he left to return home. Genesis 32. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. He instructed them, "You are to say to my master Esau, 'Your servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, men servants, and maidservants. I have sent this message to inform my master, so that I may find favor in your sight.' When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, 'We went to your brother Esau, and now he is coming to meet you, he and 400 men with him.' In great fear and distress, Jacob divided his people into 2 camps, as well as the flocks and herds and camels. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one camp, then the other camp can escape. Then Jacob declared, 'O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, the Lord who told me, "Go back to your country and to your kindred, and I will make you prosper," I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Indeed, with only my staff I came across the Jordan, but now I have become 2 camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid that he may come and attack me and the mothers and children with me. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, too numerous to count. Jacob spent the night there, and from what he had brought with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau: 200 female goats, 20 male goats, 200 ewes, 20 rams, 30 milk camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys, and 10 male donkeys. He entrusted them to his servants in separate herds, and told them, "Go on ahead of me, and keep some distance between the herds." He instructed the one in the lead, "When my brother Esau meets you and asks, 'To whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose animals are these before you?' then you are to say, 'They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent to my lord Esau. And behold, Jacob is behind us.'" He also instructed the second, the third, and all those following behind the herds, "When you meet Esau, you are to say the same thing to him. You are also to say, 'Look, your servant Jacob is right behind us.'" For he thought, "I will appease Esau with the gift that is going before me. After that I can face him, and perhaps he will accept me." So Jacob's gifts went on before him, while he spent the night in the camp. During the night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream, along with all his possessions. So Jacob was left all alone, and there a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower Jacob, he struck the socket of Jacob's hip and dislocated it as they wrestled. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob," he replied. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." And Jacob requested, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed Jacob there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "Indeed, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed by Penuel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore to this day the Israelites do not eat the tendon which is at the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was struck near that tendon. Genesis 33. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming toward him with 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 maidservants. He put the maidservants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph at the rear. But Jacob himself went on ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. Esau, however, ran to him and embraced him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they both wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he asked, "Who are these with you?" Jacob answered, "These are the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the maidservants and their children approached and bowed down. Leah and her children also approached and bowed down. And then Joseph and Rachel approached and bowed down. "What do you mean by sending this whole company to meet me?" asked Esau. "To find favor in your sight, my lord," Jacob answered. "I already have plenty, my brother," Esau replied. "Keep what belongs to you." But Jacob insisted, "No, please, if I have found favor in your sight, then receive this gift from my hand. For indeed, I have seen your face, and it is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me favorably. Please accept my gift that was brought to you, because God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." So Jacob pressed him until he accepted. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way, and I will go ahead of you." But Jacob replied, "My Lord knows that the children are frail, and I must care for sheep and cattle that are nursing their young. If they are driven hard for even a day, all the animals will die. Please let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will continue on slowly, at a comfortable pace for the livestock and children, until I come to my lord at Seir. Let me leave some of my people with you, Esau said. But Jacob replied, Why do that? Let me find favor in the sight of my lord. So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir, but Jacob went on to Succoth, where he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock. That is why the place was called Succoth. After Jacob had come from Padan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in the land of Canaan, and he camped just outside the city. And the plot of ground where he pitched his tent he purchased from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 pieces of silver. There he set up an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. Genesis 34. Now Dinah, the daughter Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the daughters of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor the Hivite, the prince of the region, saw her, he took her and lay with her by force. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young girl, and spoke to her tenderly. So Shechem told his father Hamor, Get me this girl as a wife. Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah, but since his sons were with his livestock in the field, he remained silent about it until they returned. Meanwhile, Shechem's father Hamor came to speak with Jacob. When Jacob's sons heard what had happened, they returned from the field. They were filled with grief and fury because Shechem had committed an outrage in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. But Hamor said to them, My son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters, and take our daughters for yourselves. You may settle among us, and the land will be open to you. Live here, move about freely, and acquire your own property. Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, Grant me this favor, and I will give you whatever you ask. Demand a high dowry and an expensive gift, and I will give you whatever you ask. Only give me the girl as my wife. But because Shechem had defiled their sister Dinah, Jacob's sons answered him and his father Hamor deceitfully. We cannot do such a thing, they said. To give our sister to an uncircumcised man would be a disgrace to us. We will consent to this on one condition, that you become circumcised like us, every one of your males. Then we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We will dwell among you and become one people. But if you will not agree to be circumcised, then we will take our sister and go. Their offer seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was the most respected of all his father's household, did not hesitate to fulfill this request, because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city and addressed the men of their city. These men are at peace with us. Let them live and trade in our land. Indeed, it is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters in marriage and give our daughters to them. But only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us and be one people, if all our men are circumcised as they are. Will not their livestock, their possessions, and all their animals become ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell among us. All the men who went out of the city gate listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male of the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while they were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Dinah's brothers Simeon and Levi, took their swords, went into the unsuspecting city, and slaughtered every male. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with their swords, took Dinah out of Shechem's house, and went away. Jacob's other sons came upon the slaughter and looted the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their flocks and herds and donkeys, and everything else in the city or in the field. They carried off all their possessions, and women and children, and they plundered everything in their houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, You have brought trouble upon me, by making me a stench to the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the people of this land. We are few in number, If they unite against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" Genesis 35. Then God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and settle there. Build an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." So Jacob told his household and all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods that are among you. Purify yourselves and change your garments. Then let us arise and go to Bethel. I will build an altar there to God, who answered me in my day of distress. He has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave Jacob all their foreign gods and all their earrings, and Jacob buried them under the oak near Shechem. As they set out, a terror from God fell over the surrounding cities, so that they did not pursue Jacob's sons. So Jacob and everyone with him arrived in Luz, that is, Bethel, in the land of Canaan. There Jacob built an altar, and he called that place El Bethel, because it was there that God had revealed himself to Jacob as he fled from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak below Bethel. So Jacob named it Alon-Bacuth. After Jacob had returned from Padan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. And God said to him, "Though your name is Jacob, you will no longer be called Jacob. Instead, your name will be Israel." So God named him Israel. And God told him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation, even a company of nations, shall come from you, and kings shall descend from you. The land that I gave to Abraham and Isaac I will give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from the place where he had spoken with him. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where God had spoken with him, a stone marker, and he poured out a drink offering on it and anointed it with oil. Jacob called the place where God had spoken with him Bethel. Later they set out from Bethel, and while they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth, and her labor was difficult. During her severe labor, the midwife said to her, "Do not be afraid, for you are having another son." And with her last breath, for she was dying, she named him Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. Jacob set up a pillar on her grave. It marks Rachel's tomb to this day. Israel again set out and pitched his tent beyond the Tower of Eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard about it. Jacob had 12 sons. The sons of Leah were Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's maidservant Bilhah were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Leah's maidservant Zilpah were Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Padan Aram. Jacob returned to his father Isaac at Mamre, near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. And Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Genesis 36. This is the account of Esau, that is, Edom. Esau took his wives from the daughters of Canaan: Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite; Oholibamah, daughter of Anah and granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite; and Basemath, daughter of Ishmael and sister of Nebaioth. And Adah bore Eliphaz to Esau. Basemath gave birth to Ruel, and Oholibamah gave birth to Jeush, Jalem, and Korah. These were the sons of Esau, who were born to him in the land of Canaan. Later Esau took his wives and sons and daughters, and all the people of his household, along with his livestock, all his other animals, and all the property he had acquired in Canaan. And he moved to a land far away from his brother Jacob, for their possessions were too great for them to dwell together. The land where they stayed could not support them because of their livestock. So Esau, that is Edom, settled in the area of Mount Seir. This is the account of Esau, the father of the Edomites, in the area of Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's sons: Eliphaz, son of Esau's wife Adah, and Reuel, son of Esau's wife Basemath. The sons of Eliphaz were Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Additionally, Timnah, a concubine of Esau's son Eliphaz, gave birth to Amalek. These are the grandsons of Esau's wife Adah. These are the sons of Reuel: Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. They are the grandsons of Esau's wife Basemath. These are the sons of Esau's wife Oholibamah, daughter of Anah and granddaughter of Zibeon, whom she bore to Esau: Jeush, Jalem, and Korah. These are the chiefs among the sons of Esau. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau: chiefs Teman, Omar, Zepho, Kenaz, Korah, Gatam, and Amalek. They are the chiefs of Eliphaz in the land of Edom, and they are the grandsons of Adah. These are the sons of Esau's son Reuel: chiefs Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. They are the chiefs descended from Reuel in the land of Edom, and they are the grandsons of Esau's wife Basemath. These are the sons of Esau's wife Oholibamah: chiefs Jeush, Jalem, and Korah. They are the chiefs descended from Esau's wife Oholibamah, the daughter of Anah. All these are the sons of Esau, that is Edom, and they were their chiefs. These are the sons of Seir the Horite, who were living in the land: Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. They are the chiefs of the Horites, the descendants of Seir in the land of Edom. The sons of Lotan were Hori and Hemam. Timnah was Lotan's sister. These are the sons of Shobal: Alvan, Manahath, Ebal, Shepho, and Onam. These are the sons of Zibeon: Aiah and Anah. This is the Anah who found the hot springs in the wilderness as he was pasturing the donkeys of his father Zibeon. These are the children of Anah: Dishon and Oholibamah, daughter of Anah. These are the sons of Dishon: Hemdan, Eshban, Ithran, and Kiran. These are the sons of Ezer: Bilhan, Zaavan, and Achan. These are the sons of Dishon: Uz and Aaron. These are the chiefs of the Horites: chiefs Lotan, Shobal, Zibeon, Anah, Dishon, Ezer, and Dishan. These are the chiefs of the Horites according to their divisions in the land of Seir. These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before any king reigned over the Israelites. Bela, son of Beor, reigned in Edom. The name of his city was Dinhabah. When Bela died, Jobab, son of Zerah from Basra, reigned in his place. When Jobab died, Husham from the land of the Temanites reigned in his place. When Husham died, Hadad, son of Bedad, who defeated Midian in the country of Moab, reigned in his place, and the name of his city was Avith. When Hadad died, Samlah from Masrekah reigned in his place. When Samlah died, Shaul from Rehoboth on the Euphrates reigned in his place. When Shaul died, Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor, reigned in his place. When Baal-Hanan, son of Akbor, died, Hadad reigned in his place. His city was named Pau, and his wife's name was Mehetabel, daughter of Matred, the daughter of Mezahab. These are the names of Esau's chiefs, according to their families and regions, by their names: chiefs Timnah, Alva, Jetheth, Oholibamah, Elah, Pinon, Kenaz, Teman, Mibzar, Magdiel, and Iram. These were the chiefs of Edom, according to their settlements in the land they possessed. Esau was the father of the Edomites. Genesis 37. Now Jacob lived in the land where his father had resided, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob. When Joseph was 17 years old, he was tending the flock with his brothers, the sons of his father's wives, Bilhah and Zilpah, and he brought their father a bad report about them. Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons, because Joseph had been born to him in his old age. So he made him a robe of many colors. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Then Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to mine." "Do you intend to reign over us?" his brothers asked. "Will you actually rule us?" So they hated him even more because of his dream and his statements. Then Joseph had another dream and told it to his brothers. "Look," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." He told his father and brothers, but his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream that you have had? Will your mother and brothers and I actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept in mind what he had said. Some time later, Joseph's brothers had gone to pasture their father's flocks near Shechem. Israel said to him, "Are not your brothers pasturing the flocks at Shechem? Get ready, I am sending you to them." "I am ready," Joseph replied. Then Israel told him, "Go now and see how your brothers and the flocks are faring, and bring word back to me." So he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. And when Joseph arrived in Shechem, a man found him wandering in the field and asked, "What are you looking for?" "I'm looking for my brothers," Joseph replied. "Can you please tell me where they are pasturing their flocks?" "They have moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let us go to Dothan.'" So Joseph set out after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now Joseph's brothers saw him in the distance, and before he arrived they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to one another. "Come now, let us kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say that a vicious animal has devoured him. Then we shall see what becomes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue Joseph from their hands. "Let us not take his life," he said. "Do not shed his blood. Throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him." Reuben said this so that he could rescue Joseph from their hands and return him to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the robe of many colors he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, with no water in it. And as they sat down to eat a meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were carrying spices, balm, and myrrh on their way down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay a hand on him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And they agreed. So when the Midianite traders passed by, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not there, he tore his clothes, returned to his brothers, and said, "The boy is gone. What am I going to do?" Then they took Joseph's robe, slaughtered a young goat, and dipped the robe in its blood. They sent the robe of many colors to their father and said, "We found this. Examine it to see whether it is your son's robe or not." His father recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. A vicious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put sackcloth around his waist, and mourned for his son many days. All his sons and daughters tried to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. "No," he said, "I will go down to Sheol mourning for my son." So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites sold Joseph in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Genesis 38. About that time, Judah left his brothers and settled near a man named Hira, an Adulamite. There Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua, and he took her as a wife and slept with her. So she conceived and gave birth to a son, and Judah named him Again she conceived and gave birth to a son, and she named him Onan. Then she gave birth to another son, and named him Shelah. It was at Kisib that she gave birth to him. Now Judah acquired a wife for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. But Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord put him to death. Then Judah said to Onan, "Sleep with your brother's wife, perform your duty as her brother-in-law, and raise up offspring for your brother." But Onan knew that the offspring would not belong to him. So whenever he would sleep with his brother's wife, he would spill his seed on the ground, so that he would not produce offspring for his brother. What he did was wicked in the sight of the Lord. So he put Onan to death as well. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up." For he thought, he may die too, like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house. After a long time, Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, died. When Judah had finished mourning, he and his friend Hira the Adulamite went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah. When Tamar was told, "Your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep," she removed her widow's garments, covered her face with a veil to disguise herself, and sat at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the way to Timnah. For she saw that although Shelah had grown up, she had not been given to him as a wife. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, because she had covered her face. Not realizing that she was his daughter-in-law, he went over to her and said, "Come now, let me sleep with you." "What will you give me for sleeping with you?" she inquired. "I will send you a young goat from my flock," Judah answered. But she replied, "Only if you leave me something as a pledge until you send it." "What pledge should I give you?" he asked. She answered, "Your seal and your cord, and the staff in your hand." So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. Then Tamar got up and departed, and she removed her veil and put on her widow's garments again. Now when Judah sent his friend Hira the Adulamite with the young goat to collect the items he had left with the woman, he could not find her. He asked the men of that place, "Where is the shrine prostitute who is beside the road at Enaim?" "No shrine prostitute has been here," they answered. So Hira returned to Judah and said, "I could not find her, and furthermore the men of that place said, 'No shrine prostitute has been here.'" "Let her keep the items," Judah replied. "Otherwise we will become a laughingstock. After all, I did send her this young goat, but you could not find her." About 3 months later, Judah was told, "Your daughter-in-law Tamar has prostituted herself, and now she is pregnant." "Bring her out," Judah replied. "Let her be burned to death." As she was being brought out, Tamar sent a message to her father-in-law. "I am pregnant by the man to whom these items belong." And she added, "Please examine them. Whose seal and cord and staff are these?" Judah recognized the items and said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." And he did not have relations with her again. When the time came for Tamar to give birth, there were twins in her womb. And as she was giving birth, one of them put out his hand. So the midwife took a scarlet thread and tied it around his wrist. "This one came out first," she announced. But when he pulled his hand back and his brother came out, she said, "You have broken out first." So he was named Perez. Then his brother came out with the scarlet thread around his wrist, and he was named Zerah. Genesis 39. Meanwhile, Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, where an Egyptian named Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard, bought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him there. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he became a successful man, serving in the household of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and made him prosper in all he did, Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household and entrusted him with everything he owned. From the time that he put Joseph in charge of his household and all he owned, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's household on account of him. The Lord's blessing was on everything he owned, both in his house and in his field. So Potiphar left all that he owned in Joseph's care. He did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after some time his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph and said, "Sleep with me." But he refused. "Look," he said to his master's wife, "with me here my master does not concern himself with anything in his house, and he has entrusted everything he owns to my care. No one in this house is greater than I am. He has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. So how could I do such a great evil and sin against God?" Although Potiphar's wife spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be near her. One day, however, Joseph went into the house to attend to his work, and not a single household servant was inside. She grabbed Joseph by his cloak and said, "Sleep with me." But leaving his cloak in her hand, he escaped and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and had run out of the house, she called her household servants. "Look," she said, "this Hebrew has been brought to us to make sport of us. He came to me so he could sleep with me, but I screamed as loud as I could. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." So Potiphar's wife kept Joseph's cloak beside her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. "The Hebrew slave you brought us came to me to make sport of me, but when I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out of the house." When his master heard the story his wife told him, saying, "This is what your slave did to me," he burned with anger. So Joseph's master took him and had him thrown into the prison where the king's prisoners were confined. While Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him and extended kindness to him, granting him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. And the warden put all the prisoners under Joseph's care, so that he was responsible for all that was done in the prison. The warden did not concern himself with anything under Joseph's care, because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. Genesis 40. Sometime later, the king's cupbearer and baker offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officers, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and imprisoned them in the house of the captain of the guard, the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard assigned them to Joseph, and he became their personal attendant. After they had been in custody for some time, both of these men, the Egyptian king's cupbearer and baker, who were being held in the prison, had a dream on the same night, and each dream had its own meaning. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw that they were distraught. So he asked the officials of Pharaoh, who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why are your faces so downcast today?" "We both had dreams," they replied, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Don't interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the chief cupbearer told Joseph his dream. "In my dream there was a vine before me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As it budded, its blossoms opened and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, squeezed them into his cup, and placed the cup in his hand." Joseph replied, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore your position. You will put Pharaoh's cup in his hand, just as you did when you were his cupbearer. But when it goes well for you, please remember me and show me kindness by mentioning me to Pharaoh, that he might bring me out of this prison. For I was kidnapped from the land of the Hebrews, and even here I have done nothing for which they should have put me in this dungeon." When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was favorable, he said to Joseph, "I too had a dream. There were 3 baskets of white bread on my head. In the top basket were all sorts of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head." Joseph replied, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree. Then the birds will eat the flesh of your body." On the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, he held a feast for all his officials, and in their presence he lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. Pharaoh restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that he once again placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But Pharaoh hanged the chief baker, just as Joseph had described to them in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot all about him.